Hello, welcome to this week's first reading and writing lesson. So we have some learning targets this week. So the first one is for reading, and it is I can ask and answer questions about what I'm reading and use specific examples from the story to support my answers. So that's not just asking a question like, does Opal like Winn-Dixie? And answering, yeah. Instead, what you're doing is you're finding explicit examples right from that story, pulling out quotes, actions of our characters to support your answer. So really that moment of reflecting on questions you have about your story and then providing evidence to support your answer. In writing this week, we also have a learning target, and that's just using those descriptive details in your writing. So this week, we're really going to be focusing on those details like what do you see, what do you smell, what do you taste, what do you hear, what do you feel? And remember, when we talk about feeling, we're really talking about what we can feel physically with our hands, but also thinking about those characters, what they can feel inside. So again, those learning targets, and I'll wrap back around to those when we're done with our little video. So what we're going to be doing with lessons right now is we're going to be using our text because of Winn-Dixie. I'm actually going to start this over. We'd only read about 3 chapters. So I know a lot of you kind of missed the beginning of it, so I want to make sure everyone's in the same spot. So we are going to be using because of Winn-Dixie, and while we're reading this, I'm going to be stopping and we are going to be looking at examples of places where we can ask ourselves questions and then find evidence from the text to answer those questions. And then also looking for places that Kate DiCamillo used that really descriptive details in her writing. So ways we can think about in our writing really how to add those descriptors, those adjectives that really describe what we're seeing. So we're going to start with chapter 1 because of Winn-Dixie and find some examples for our learning targets for this week. So chapter 1, my name is Indian Opal Bulani, and last summer my daddy, the preacher, sent me to the store for a box of macaroni and cheese, some white rice, and 2 tomatoes, and I came back with a dog. This is what happened. I walked into the produce section of the Winn-Dixie grocery store to pick out my 2 tomatoes, and I almost bumped right into the store manager. He was standing there all red-faced, screaming and waving his arms around. "Who let a dog in here?" he kept on shouting. "Who let a dirty dog in here?" At first, I didn't see a dog. There were just a lot of vegetables rolling around on the floor, tomatoes and onions and green peppers. And there was what seemed like a whole army of Winn-Dixie employees running around, waving their arms just the same way the store manager was waving his. So notice that the author, Kate DiCamillo, she didn't just say there were a bunch of Winn-Dixie employees running around, but instead she said there was an army of them. So it's really that descriptive language. And when I hear an army of employees, I'm thinking there were just tons of employees standing around trying to get this dog to come to them. So there was what seemed like a whole army of Winn-Dixie employees running around waving their arms just the same way the store manager was waving his. And then the dog came running around the corner. He was a big dog and ugly. And he looked like he was having a really good time. His tongue was hanging out and he was wagging his tail. He skidded to a stop and smiled right at me. I'd never seen a dog smile, but that is what he did. He pulled back his lips and showed me all his teeth. Then he wagged his tail so hard that he knocked some oranges off a display, and they went rolling everywhere, mixing in with the tomatoes and onions and green peppers. The manager screamed, "Somebody grab that dog!" The dog went running over to the manager, wagging his tail and smiling. He stood up on his hind legs. You could tell that all he wanted to do was get face to face with the manager and thank him for the good time he was having in the produce department. But somehow he ended up knocking the manager over. And the manager must have been having a bad day because lying there on the floor, right in front of everybody, he started to cry. The dog leaned over him, real concerned, and licked his face. So this is a part in the book where I would pause and ask myself, what kind of dog is Winn-Dixie? So we just met this dog. He is one of our characters, even though he's not a human, but they've given him characteristics. So what kind of dog is he? So when I look back in the text, I'm going to start pulling out some evidence from the text that tells me what type of dog Winn-Dixie is. So one part I see right here is he looked like he was having a real good time. So is this dog a vicious dog, or is he barking at people or trying to bite people? No, I can see that he looks like he's trying to have a real good time. His tongue was hanging out and he was wagging his tail. So I know that I'm kind of envisioning what this dog looks like. He's not baring his teeth being angry or mean. His tongue's hanging out. He's kind of wagging his tail. He thinks he's playing. The next sentence says he skidded to a stop and he smiled right at me. So we know that Opal, she's already giving these characteristics to Winn-Dixie. So right now, my evidence is that he's having a really good time. He's wagging his tail. He's smiling at people. On the next page, I can see some more evidence that you could tell that all Winn-Dixie wanted to do was get face-to-face with the manager and thank him. So Opal again is saying he just wants to play. She sees him trying to get in with the manager and just play with him. Finally, it says, after the manager started crying, that the dog leaned over him real concerned and licked his face. So when we try to think about what kind of dog Winn-Dixie is, I would say, well, I think Winn-Dixie is a kind of a happy dog and a playful dog. And the evidence I have on that is he looks like he's having a good time. He's a happy dog. We can see him with his tongue out, wagging his tail. He's smiling at Opal. He's concerned for the store manager when he's crying and really tries to lick his face to make him feel better. So we have all of these examples straight from the text that show that Winn-Dixie is a really kind of a happy dog. That's a gentle dog. All right, we're going to keep going. Please, said the manager, somebody call the pound. Wait a minute, I hollered. That's my dog. Don't call the pound. All the Winn-Dixie employees turned around and looked at me, and I knew I had done something big. And maybe stupid too, but I couldn't help it. I couldn't let that dog go to the pound. Here, boy, I said. The dog stopped licking the manager's face and put his ears up in the air and looked at me like he was trying to remember where he knew me from. Here, boy, I said again. And then I figured that the dog was probably just like everybody else in the world, that he would want to get called by a name. Only I didn't know what his name was, so I just said the first thing that came to my head. I said, here, Winn-Dixie. And that dog came trotting over to me just like he had been doing his whole life. The manager sat up and gave me a hard stare, and maybe I was making fun of him. It's his name, I said, honest. The manager said, don't you know not to bring a dog in the grocery store? Yes, sir, I told him. He got in by mistake. I'm sorry, it won't happen again. Come on, Winn-Dixie, I said to the dog. I started walking and he followed along behind me as I went out of the produce department and down the cereal aisle and past all the cashiers and out the door. Once we were safe outside, I checked him over, real careful, and he didn't look that good. Now I want you to pay attention right now because in writing this week, our learning target is using descriptive details in your writing. And so this author right here really uses some good descriptive details to talk about what Winn-Dixie looks like. So listen to what she says. I checked him over real careful, and he didn't look that good. He was big, but skinny. You could see his ribs. And there were bald patches all over him, places that didn't have any fur at all. Mostly, he looked like a big piece of old brown carpet that had been left out in the rain. Now, I don't know about you, but if I close my eyes and try to imagine what a big piece of old brown carpet looks like that's been sitting out in the rain, I think of it as it's matted and it's tangled and there's parts of it missing and maybe there's discolored parts and I bet it smells really bad. So using that descriptive language right there, she was really able to kind of make me even think of other senses that I'm using by kind of that figurative language, like an old brown piece of carpet. Now, she doesn't just say he was a big dog with brown hair, but he was big, but he was skinny. And you could see his ribs. So right away I know, oh my gosh, this Winn-Dixie, he's a big sized dog, but he's obviously hasn't been taken care of and is really skinny. So she's really, through those descriptors, you're kind of finding out more about the dog than you would have if she just said, he was big, but kind of small too. And he had parts of his hair missing. And then if they kept talking, you wouldn't know that much about Winn-Dixie, but because of that really descriptive language, really talking about kind of what was different about him than a normal dog with those bald patches, then you really get a better sense for what Winn-Dixie's like. So again, really using those descriptive details. So talking a lot about what you're seeing, what you're feeling, adding that into your writing. You're a mess, I told him. I bet you don't belong to anybody. He smiled at me. He did that thing again where he pulled back his lips and showed me his teeth. He smiled so big that it made him sneeze. It was like he was saying, I know I'm a mess. Isn't it funny? It's hard not to immediately fall in love with a dog who has a good sense of humor. Come on, I told him. Let's see what the preacher has to say about you. So right here, I'm going to pause, and I'm kind of thinking about Opal. And one of the questions I have right now is, how does Opal feel about Winn-Dixie? And I know from the text right away, I can say Opal really wanted to protect Winn-Dixie, and we can go back and find evidence from the text that really, right when Opal came in and saw him, she kind of knew what kind of dog he was because she was looking at those clues and how he was wagging his tail and smiling and running around having a good time. And then we see that she said, he's my dog because I couldn't see him go to the pound. So right away, I know that Opal really wants to save this dog that she thinks is a good dog. But I want to look for some details that really tell me how Opal feels about Winn-Dixie. So again, she's seeing him smile. Now, some people I think dogs smile, but that's almost a perception that a human would have about an animal. So the fact that she keeps saying he's smiling, I mean, she's connecting with this dog, and she's feeling that connection to Winn-Dixie. She also says when he sneezes at her and he says, I know I'm a mess, isn't it funny? So she's giving this dog like characteristics. So again, she's already kind of feeling bonded to Winn-Dixie. And then that next sentence, it's hard not to immediately fall in love with a dog who has a good sense of humor. And that sentence right there, if I ask myself, how does Opal feel about him? I would say right now, she's starting to love Winn-Dixie. She thinks he's a funny dog. She thinks he's a playful dog and a happy dog with all of the characteristics they're pointing out. So really using that evidence from the text to show how Opal feels about him. And finally it says, and the two of us, me and Winn-Dixie, started walking home. So that's chapter 1. We'll continue in chapter 2 with our next lesson. So again, this week, really with that learning target for reading, what we're doing is while we're reading this week, and all of you are about to, after this video is over, find some reading to do. You can either read out of a chapter book you're reading right now. We are really focusing on narrative right now. So if you're reading nonfiction, this isn't going to work quite as well, but really trying to find some, and even if you're reading nonfiction, maybe some narrative nonfiction telling a story about a real person, and then you can be asking yourself questions. But asking questions and then really using specific examples from the text to answer those. And so if you click on your Google Doc that's attached to this lesson, you'll see a place where I've included an example of that. So I'm actually going to click on mine really quickly so I can see. So you're going to be reading for that 20 and 30 minutes. During that time, I want you to take some breaks, and you're going to be recording some things in your weekly reading journal. Now, here's a little thing that you can do. If you have notepads at home or pieces of paper or even Post-it notes like we use in the classroom, you can use those while we're doing this. I would love for you to type in a little bit, or if you can have mom and dad take a picture of your Post-it note or of your handwritten notes and put them onto the document. Just upload them for me so I can just be able to give you some feedback and check in with you. But this is just like in the classroom. So you're going to take that 20 to 30 minutes, and really would love for you all to push yourself to do that 30 minutes of reading and taking those breaks to pause and ask yourself questions about what you're reading. And then you're responding to your question using evidence from the text. And we've done a lot of practice with this in the classroom. So I know you can all do it. So really taking those breaks and recording your thoughts. Again, if it feels better to write it on paper and then type it up later, feel free to do that. If you're reading and you have your window open on your laptop or whatever you're using at home to type and have the document up, you can just type in there while you're reading. Again, this is just like that workshop model, responding to text. This is what we've been doing all year long. So what you'll really want to focus on is asking yourself questions about your book and then answering those questions. So again, I don't want to see that. Does Opal like Winn-Dixie? Yes. Using examples, prove it. Remember what I always say, prove it. How do you know that Opal likes Winn-Dixie? How do you know that Opal cares about this dog? Then you get evidence from the text to support your answer. I did an example on here. I'm not going to go over it with you, but please read the example on the journal sheet, and that will give you kind of an idea of what I'm looking for. So really pulling that, trying to find more than one piece of evidence to support your answer if you can. That would be great. All right, I'm going to pop over to the writing. Now for writing this week, what I would like you to shoot for is each day kind of trying to spend again about 20 minutes of writing time. This week it's pretty easy with that learning target. I can use descriptive details in my writing. We're really just looking at really short writing pieces today and pulling out those descriptive words. Again, those adjectives describing what you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you taste even. So each day, the activity for this week is each day, again, you have a writing journal. Each day this week, write about people, places, events, or things that you are familiar with. Try to use descriptive details about how it looked, sounded, smelled, and felt. So if I'm talking about, let's see, my example was the fair. So when I was a kid, I used to go to the fair, the county fair every summer. And I really kind of tried to remember that event and remembered like what I saw, what did I smell in the air? How did I feel? How did it make me feel on the inside? Or maybe what did I feel on the outside? What did I taste? I know I remembered right away that sugar melting in my mouth from that cotton candy and having my mouth covered in blue and having a taste of that blue raspberry cotton candy. So really trying to just use that that descriptive language. And I'm going to be posting a little bit, some more resources as the week goes on to help you with that, really thinking of those adjectives, those describing words. Okay, so I didn't just go on the roller coaster, I went on the thrilling, highest roller coaster in the world. Okay, so really adding those details to make those more complex sentences, which is what we really want to see, is starting to get those really complex sentences in our writing. So again, there's an example on here. For each day of the week, you can choose one topic, really thinking about people, places, or events that you can describe. And then really going through those 5 senses, okay? Really seeing, what did I see? What did I smell? What did I taste? What did I hear? What did I feel? And then, so going through those 5 senses. So really at least those five sentences would cover 5 senses, but really working to put it into that narrative form, okay? Focusing on that is that time and telling a story about it. So again, I do have it on here that there's one topic a day. If you're setting a timer at home and you're really thinking, okay, I'm gonna write for about 20 minutes today, and then tomorrow you don't finish one topic, then tomorrow you can just make a little note on there and let me know, hey, I worked on the fair. I did that for 2 days. So you might not have something for every day, and I totally get that. Again, if you if you want to use, a pencil and paper and write it down that way. I know this is going to take a while to figure out how to make this work for everyone. I know some of you are more comfortable typing than others. I know for some of you, typing is a kind of a slower process, and that writing by hand using that pencil might be better. I've already had lots of kids just taking pictures and uploading their handwritten stuff to me, which is totally fine. So if that is what works better for you, it's totally okay with me. I can read your handwritten stuff, upload it. Unfortunately, I can't see you and then work with you on it in person, but if you can upload that for me to give you feedback, that would be fantastic. So our goal this week is to post lessons Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then have some meeting times that I can meet with you all. If anyone has any questions or wants to get some more focused feedback for me, Tuesday and Thursday, I'm going to try to have some times where you can just hit a link and come in and chat with me if you have anything you want to talk about. So I will be seeing you again on Wednesday with chapter 2. We'll be talking about these same learning targets, really looking at asking ourselves questions about our stories and using evidence from the text to answer those questions, and then also tying it into our weekly writing learning target, which is using those descriptive details in my writing. So remember, reading and writing go hand in hand. They're partners, they're buddies. So while you're reading this week, look for that descriptive language in your reading, and that will help you with your writing as well. So really looking for those moments where that writer explained something so well and described something so well that you could picture it in your head. You could smell it without actually having it in front of you. Or you could hear the sound of what was happening in your story, even though you weren't really hearing it. So that's how people are using words to make you feel certain ways. So looking again for that descriptive language as you're reading and using it in your writing, and then asking yourself those questions about your stories and looking for the evidence from the text to answer. All right, good luck today and tomorrow, and I will see you again on Wednesday. Again, please feel free to leave a comment on the activity, and I will be responding there. Or again, I will let you know when my times are available on Tuesday to chat with me if you have any questions or comments. All right, I hope everyone's doing great. Good luck. I will talk to you soon. Bye.